What is up, Keller Williams agents? It is me, Sam Jackson, Director of Innovation Technology for the amazing Georgia Legacy Group. And today I'm going to share a recorded session that we had the privilege, the Georgia Legacy Group, of interviewing Jen Davis, who is not only CEO of the Holt Homes Group out of Missouri, one of the top and best maps coach that we have inside of Keller Williams. But what Jen is known for is being one of the best buyer specialists in the KW company, and she's closed more than 100 buyers in a year. And what I want to share with you today is the interview that we had with her that we originally programmed on August 19th, 2020. I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We'll get the recording going here, and then we'll get this broadcasted back out on Facebook. But Jen, thank you so much for being with us. We're super excited to have you. And I know that we played a lot of back and forth just trying to get connected because your schedule is insane right now. So on top of running as a CEO of Holt Homes Group, bold pivot coach right now with, I think your week was last week, your Star to Shine. Maps coach as well, about to run Mastering Buyers 2.0 and about probably a million other things that I'm missing. So I just appreciate you sticking with me and following up. But I was introduced to you via, unfortunately, the best friends that you have with Andy and Leslie, but Tim Beverlin, my maps coach, had made that introduction. So I'm glad that you're connected to our group. But obviously your reputation, you're a legend with buyers, and I would love to just have you talk about your experience, how you became the queen of buyers. You've sold more than 100 buyers in a year. When you look at the MREA and we hear listings, leads, leverage, how do you combat that with your own career? What advice can you share?
Well, first of all, there were so many compliments in there that my head is like this big. And like I was called a queen and all these other things. So number one, I very much appreciate being here. I love to get to partner in different regions and get to meet different people. So Sam, I was super happy for the introduction. Tim Beverlin, I got to co-host one of his coaching programs a few weeks ago. So that was neat. And Andy and Leslie are potentially my two very favorite people in all of Keller Williams. So thrilled to be here. As far as the buy side and leverage on the buy side, here's kind of what I found. When I started out as a buyer's agent, the best thing that happened to me was that I partnered with Dan Holt, who was our founder, is the founder of our company. And he was the first person that really treated the buyer agent role as not a less than role. So he was willing to sit down with me and line item out what it would look like to have a big business really within his organization. So, Gary Keller talks about having a big world and creating a big world for people. And it's interesting because I potentially am the first recipient of something like that, right? So, I have a founder of a company that let me run a big business within his big business. So when we built out the buy side, initially I was in more of the reactive position that most buyers agents are in. So leads would come in, I would run with them, we would get them under contract. In my first year at KW, I had been in another company first. So I had been with another company for 5 years. And then Dan recruited me and I moved over to KW. My first year at KW, I sold 49 houses. The year before that, I sold 16. So just looking at what those models and systems can look like on the buy side, it's not really any different than the listing side, right? So what we looked at was I needed to know how many contacts I needed to make in order to set an appointment. I needed to know what my conversion rate was so that I could sign those buyer broker agreement or buyer agency agreement, however, loyalty agreement, whatever you guys call that. And then out of those, how long did it take me to build up a pipeline so that I knew how many new people I needed to meet in a month so that I could hit my monthly goal, right? Because it's not every buyer you meet in a month is going to transact within that month. And what I found for us, it was really 30%. 30% of appointments I went on were ready to transact in that month. And that's held pretty true until this year. So I knew if I wanted to sell, 3 houses in a month, that I really needed to bring in 9 new appointments. So I needed to meet with 9 new buyers. And then over time, you build out this pipeline. So some of those other 6 start cycling through. So that first year, closed 49 units. And then Dan was like, okay, so what do we do next? Because quality of life was pretty rough at that point. I have 2 little kids, and I really had no control of my schedule at that point. So we started adding some leverage. And so I think that would be the thing that I would talk to you guys about. If you're going to run a big buy side, or you're the rainmaker and you're going to hire somebody to help you with the buy side, you're looking for somebody that's an empire builder. You're looking for somebody that is going to treat it as though they're running a business, and not like a real estate agent, right? So we looked at, how can I leverage this, get some quality time back, and stay within model. So we built it out just like the MREA model. We just happened to do it on the buy side instead of the listing side. So when I talk about the buy side, everyone wants to go straight to showing agents or showing partners. And that's really your last piece of leverage. And no one wants to hear that. Everyone wants to leverage the showing part first. So if you look at it and you look at how did we do such big units, it's really because we leverage the same way as MREA. So I added admin support and jumped up to 72 closed units. And then I added a MAPS coach. And then and at the same time added help with lead generation. Lead generation on the buy side is a little different than it is on the listing side. It's a lot of the nurturing. It's a lot of moving people forward. We talk about forward pacing on our team, getting them through that pipeline. And so that year I jumped up to the 110 units. So closed 110 on the buy side. And I think, to be fair, the same year Dan took 272 listings. So it's not that I was leading with buyers. I just want to make sure everyone understands we have a healthy business in that we still lead with listings. So then I was the ceiling for our team. And Dan wanted to grow the team. Our director of lead generation at that time wanted to make more bonuses. So she wanted to book more buy side leads. And I was at capacity. At that point, I did have control of my schedule. I worked 2 nights a week. I worked 1 day a weekend. And typically I took off Thursdays to spend extra time with my kids. And I wasn't willing to give that up again. So at that point, I had to hire either another buyer agent or a showing agent. So we went with the showing agent. That was in 2016, and I hired Kathleen. She's still on our team, and hired her in January, second showing agent in June, and we closed 182 buy sides that year. So I was the only buyer agent. I handled contract, negotiations, making sure that pipeline was full. And then the next year we jumped up to 225, same 3 people. And then we started redoing it again. I hired an EA to help out, to kind of leverage off some more of that admin support to really get the 2 showing agents in, really in their strength zone, right? We talk about top 20% activities, and that's not just for the leader of the organization. So Leslie knows this very well. She and I have had conversations around it. As a leader of an organization, you're not the only one that gets leverage, right? So we've got to make sure that as we grow and our top 20% narrows, that the people around us, we also narrow their top 20% activities. So we really held at this 225 number, and I have not yet been able to get past it. And then I took over as the CEO about a year ago in May. And replaced myself on the buy side. And I think right now we're on track to do 250 buy side units without me in the buy side. So that was a long answer to a very short question. Sorry.
Well, and with a lot of great nuggets in there. And one of the things that I'm kind of hearing in between there is that you didn't say it out loud, but it sounds like we had an entrepreneurial approach. We got really purposeful. We had big goals, and then we put big models in place, right? And we hear that in the MREA, and yet that applies for both the listing and the buy side. So you're absolutely crushing it. But one of the words or the phrases you shared is, you said that I am the ceiling to my team. What does that mean? If you could describe to somebody that may not be on a team or thinking about joining a team, as a leader, what does that mean to you to say that out loud?
So there are always ceilings within business, and you typically find it when you can't get past a certain number, and it's either a system or a person. Always. It always boils down to a system or a person. So for individual agents on the team, It may be utilizing your database. It might be Command. It might be whatever database or CRM you're choosing to use. That could be the ceiling if you're not utilizing it to its full potential. It also can be a person, and that could be admin support to take off. When we talked about those 20% activities, well, the other side of that are the 80% activities. Those 80% activities still have to be done. They just don't necessarily need to be done by you. And so when you're the ceiling, it takes some emotional intelligence to understand that, right? So it takes some emotional intelligence to think, okay, my director of lead generation is 100% capped out on the buy side because I can't sell more homes, right? There was no more capacity. So if I don't open up a calendar, mine or someone else's, she can't make any more money. She can't grow her team within a team. And so we're all kind of stalled out. At the same time, I'm stalling Dan's business because he's doing a great job on the listing side, and with that come more buyers. And so it's understanding, where you're at in your business, what your role is, and how that plays into a team.
And that 80%, that lives with all of us, whether you're a single agent just getting started in the business or if you're reaching Jen Davis level. That 80% always looks different though. So like for a new agent, a solo agent, that 80% could be something like hiring a cleaner so that you don't have to take care of that during your day, so that you can spend more time dollar per hour so you can lead generate. And then we grow up to the Jen Davis level of, okay, maybe I need to hire 2 or 3, 4 more people to help me out. So do you look back?
That's an interesting perspective, right? Like the cleaner. I can remember Dan leaving early on. I had just started and he would leave to go home to mow his lawn. And I was like, can we just hire a lawnmower? Like, can we just get someone to mow that for you?
And that was the victory for me this year. Yeah, that was my aha for this year, is I need somebody to cut the grass. It's just a waste of time. Yeah,
it's a waste of time.
And I think that's the one thing that we need to understand is there's leverage, right? And the impact that can have and what that frees you up to do. So Jen, taking a look at like your profile online, and obviously we did a lot of research for maps and we know you. You didn't start out with 49 clients out of the gate. You started in 2008 as a rookie, and probably one of the worst times to get in real estate, which is kind of weird for our new agents in the room right now. Who are thinking, oh man, what did I get myself into? What advice can you share from your experience there?
I think that boils down to mindset, right? I think I had no idea. That was the blessing of joining real estate in 2008, is I didn't know any different. The bold pivot last week, that's what we talked about, was mindset. And what I have found for new agents, and really in life in general, what you put in is what comes out. So if you put fear in, fear comes out. And what I mean by that is if we're watching the news and we're not careful of who we're listening to and what voices we're putting in, or food choices or drink choices or whatever else, that what you put in comes out. Same with faith, right? If you put faith in, if you put good stuff in, if you plug into your market center and you take bold pivot, or you surround yourself with a tribe of people that have a healthy mindset, and they're your cheerleaders. They want you to win. I think for a new agent, that's potentially right now the most important thing, is being careful of what you allow in, so that you know that you can still be successful. We're having our best year ever. COVID hasn't stopped that. I mean, that was a choice. That was a choice to, we're going to work harder. I have not worked as hard as I have this year in years. And I'm okay with it, because my mindset is I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure those 18 people outside of this door are taken care of. So I think if I was going to give one piece of advice to brand new agents, is you determine the market that you're in based on how you show up and what you're willing to do. Ethically speaking, of course. I mean, what you're willing to do, ethically speaking. So making sure that you're going after that business, controlling your calendar, controlling that mindset, and having a support system around you in the event that you falter. Because it's not perfect. Mindset isn't perfect. And we have to have some help sometimes.
Yeah. So COVID happened, right? And you're still having your best year ever. What changes, or how did you have to adapt in the current climate?
Well, we went home, so we're able to be back in our office now, and I know that that is not standard across the country. We went home March 15th and we're home for 6 weeks. And we went home 10 days ahead of when the requirement was for us to go home. So the benefit with that was we were able to make that adjustment pretty early on. And then as the rest of the real estate community was making that adjustment, we had about a 10-day head start. We've done a lot of things. We cut expenses. I think everybody's done that. We looked really hard at what we were spending, why we were spending it. Is there a return on investment, or are we spending it for some sort of an ego purpose? What does that look like? And then I sat down with Dan and got very clear on what our plan was. So we came up with a PACE plan, and Jordan Freed is a MAPS coach, and I saw he made this post about this, and I was like, oh, it's so smart. And a PACE plan is you have your primary plan. Your primary plan was really what we were all doing up until March, right? We were working our primary plan. The alternate plan came into play when we all had to go home. And so what does that look like? What's the alternate plan? And then the C of PACE is, what's your contingency plan? The alternate plan's not working. More adjustments need to be made. What does that look like? And then the E is the emergency plan. Everything stops. What happens? What happens if title companies no longer will handle closings? What happens if we no longer can show houses? So what we did is we went through this PACE plan and we looked at what adjustments do we need to make at what level? And so we put numbers next to it, because that's the only thing that we can control are the number of under contracts we have and what the dollars are coming into our team. So we knew if we got to a certain level of under contracts, at that point, the decisions were going to get harder, and they probably meant people, right? And we fortunately did not get to that point. However, we spent time on the front side writing out that plan so that in the event that it happened or happens in the future, the emotion is out of it. It doesn't mean we're not going to feel sad. It doesn't mean that we're not going to, be concerned about it. It does mean, though, that we're not going to wait too long. We've got a plan in place. It's written down. And so if something happens, we know what our next steps are. That's been the blessing of COVID, I think, is the really, I feel like I know the business better now than I've ever known it. I understand where we're at and what those tangibles and measurables are.
Yeah. And what I love about that is you sat down and you made a plan. I think for a lot of us, this just happened and we were sticking to our original plan and making adjustments along the way. But I think sitting down and really exploring that will create opportunities and let you evaluate on ways you can fundamentally change your business. Was there anything uncovering that you're looking at that says like, hey, I may never go back to this old process because of COVID that came out of this PACE plan?
I think, honestly, the virtual consults, I think we'll never go back to an in-person buyer consult unless someone, just requests that. Because number one, there's this thought of like a speed to lead, which is typically the lead comes in and how quickly can I respond to it? This is an extra layer of that. How quickly does the lead come in? How quickly can I respond to it? And now I can get in front of them immediately. So if I'm getting in front of them immediately, we can do the consult. They're on their home turf, right? They're at their home, they're comfortable. The buyer consult went from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. The objections around signing buyer agency agreements went away because you've got your screen shared, you're forward pacing them through the signing of it. And so that system, I will tell you, the efficiencies in that, I don't know that we'll get away from. People are comfortable with Zoom now. They're comfortable with a Google Hangout. And so they don't have time always to come into the office. And this has given us that extra level of, we can convert at a much higher level the faster we get in front of them.
Excellent. And so we've adjusted. When you're working with 200 buyers, how have you seen the consumer change because of this? So like obviously they're more willing to work with Zoom, but in a COVID world, what are you experiencing with consumers? What are you seeing from their point of view?
Well, it's interesting. I think it was at the very beginning, there were some objections that we were creating that we didn't need to create, right? We were more worried about it sometimes than the buyer was, and we were introducing some fear that didn't need to happen. So that was a little bit of an adjustment, right? Meeting the buyer where they're at. And I mean that in their space, emotionally, intelligently. What's their concern? Is it actually health? Is it actually financial? And then how do we make sure that they feel comfortable moving forward? And whether that's now or 18 months from now. The interesting thing that I will say that I've seen on buyers is Gary talked about last mega camp that a buyer entering the funnel, your funnel, was 19 months, I think is what he said. It's shorter right now. The people that are coming in the funnel, they're transacting faster. And I don't know that I know a reason behind it, but I can tell you that it doesn't seem like the leads that are coming in are that far out. The people that are coming in that are raising their hand and saying, I'd like to buy a home, they're motivated to buy right now. And it makes the transaction a little bit more seamless and a little bit faster.
Well, yeah, I think COVID kind of got rid of the looky-loos, right? We'd hold open houses and people would come in for entertainment. I think that's probably why I got into real estate. My family, we were broke. We went to open houses for like after church on Sundays. That was our entertainment. You don't see that anymore, but I think you'd have buyers getting, they're getting serious and they're also educated. We've had more resources online for buyers than we've ever. We've seen the buyer profile change.
We have, and I think, we used to coach around, we're going to show 3 houses, maybe 4 max before somebody makes an offer. Right now it's maybe 1. So instead of doing the work on the back end where we're taking them to look at their top 3 to 4 choices or 2 to 3 choices, and then we come back and then we pull disclosures and we run comps and we do all that stuff. What's happening is we're doing that on the front side of it. So before a buyer goes out, they are 100% are comfortable driving past the house to make sure they like it. We're sending them the disclosures. We're sending them fair market value. We're also sending them a video tour of the home. So now we're going from showing 4 homes to 1. I mean, some of the heavy lifting has been done by COVID, and that's one of those things where you're like, that was a blessing in disguise that we just got to realize after the fact.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask a tough question, and I kind of owe it to my role as the technology person in the office.
Uh-oh.
If our clients are becoming more educated, right, and we're saying that they're only looking at 1 home, what is the competition, or where, I guess the better question is, where's your value as a buyer's agent if there is a lockbox that they can open via, other technology company that goes show this 1 house? How are you combating that with your value? Because we hear all the time that buyer agents could be replaced by technology. It's a scary thought, and COVID may be kicking this up a little bit. Have you thought about that? Are you combating against it?
It's interesting. I think we had more of that ahead of COVID. I think now that COVID has happened, people are searching for that connectivity piece. They miss the relationship. They miss going to work. They miss having their friends over. They miss all those things. So we've not seen necessarily an uptick in that type of an objection. Our value proposition is always, though, that we're the expert in the market and that we can negotiate them the best deal possible. We're winning multiple offers, and that doesn't mean that we're paying the most. It doesn't mean that our buyers are paying more than fair market value. We've got ways around that to win multiple offers to make sure that we set their offer apart. So I did see that more, the lack of loyalty ahead of COVID. I actually, and our market is clearly different because I am in the middle of the Midwest. The loyalty factor has increased, I feel like, since all of this started.
Yeah. And so I bought during COVID. So I closed my house late March, kind of at the beginning of this whole thing. And that's one of the things that I shared too, is that when we closed, it was weird. One of the things that I missed from like a normal buying experience was like celebrating at the closing table. Like we got our keys and it was just like, okay, go wipe everything out with Lysol. And that was the experience. I missed that. You're right. It was the emotional part of that. It felt like that air was let out of the balloon. But I think that if you nailed it, I think if we can really anchor those relationships on getting in personal relationships with our clients and not make this seem like a transaction, but more like a movement, we'll stand no problem against technology.
I think that's it. I think technology is there for it's leverage, right? The technology is there to make the steps easier, and people still want to have a relationship with the person. They're also okay to do a virtual walkthrough. They're okay to sign everything electronically. and they still want that face-to-face, whether it's Zoom or a Google Hangout or voice to voice. So I think technology, if we can see it as doing the heavy lifting, or that it's the leverage of it's leverage, it doesn't replace the relationship. I think that this time right now will weed out a lot of those types of things. I think now is the agent's chance to shine. I think we're in a better spot now than we were 12 months ago as far as people seeing us as a resource.
Yeah. And one of the ways to help yourself shine is to educate buyers. So given the current inventory literally across the country, I don't know of a market that is high inventory right now. How are you helping buyers with the climate right now?
I think it is the education piece, Sam. I think that's exactly right. So when we're doing that first consult, what we're looking at is explaining the whole market to them before we even get started. It's really part of that rapport building.
So what's that sound like?
So, it's Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. We're so excited for you to be in here today, and here in the Zoom. We're excited for you to be here today, and we can't wait to help you. And what we need to do is I need you to understand what the market looks like right now. I want you to know so that so we can make it a level playing field for you. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I want to talk with you through what our average days on market are, what it looks like to negotiate a contract, and some different pieces of the contract outside of pricing that can set your offer apart. So then we're going through and we're saying average days on market is X. This is what you can expect. This is what we can negotiate off. Because what I found is if we wait till they're ready to make an offer, and I go to Leslie and I say, hey, Leslie, this house is priced at $350,000 and we really need you to offer $360,000 and waive your appraisal. Then she's like, hey, wait a second. Are you working for me or are you working for the seller? Now, if I tell Leslie that the first time I meet her and I'm explaining to her and I'm showing her numbers and I'm giving her the data to back it up, she knows what's coming. Now, there are going to be buyers that don't want to play in this market. They don't want to compete in this market. That's okay. We're not here to trick somebody into doing something. They can either go into our pipeline and they can buy when they're comfortable, or we have a solution of aged inventory. In any market, there are houses that don't sell, right? There are things that have sat on the market for 30, 45, 60 days. Let's make an effort and go after those. If you've got somebody that wants a deal or they want to negotiate, as long as I've explained in the consult, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, that's really not an option with new inventory. And we potentially have some opportunity for you on aged inventory. Let's just set your search for anything that's 3 weeks or older to market, and let's try and hit it before there's a price improvement. What I know is if we hit it before there's a price improvement, we can negotiate more off the price. There's a solution for everybody out there. You just have to understand the buyer's motivation. And that's what I meant by meeting them where they're at. What is going to make them move? Is it the house or is it the deal? And then you can kind of guide them through where they need to go next.
And where is the best place to get educated on that information of running that system, running those scripts? I'm going to debug that up for you.
Well, I mean, as far as knowing the information for your market, I would say your team meetings. I mean, your TLs, your OPs, the productivity coaches, they're going to get you your market specific. You want to be hyper local. As far as the scripting and all of that, I clearly do run a MAPS program that has all of the scripting that's, 0 through 250 transactions. So I would love to help you with scripting.
Yeah. And so I want to make a promise to all of you. If you guys stay through the end of the call, we're going to give away one class for Mastering Buyers 2.0. And when's that kicking off, Jen?
It kicks off the Wednesday after Mega Camp.
Okay. Excellent. So we're going to have a drawing at the end of this. I'm going to put this together with some bubble gum and Scotch tape on how we're going to decide that person. But I have an idea in mind. So stick around. We're going to actually give away one ticket to Jen's class, which is a $200 value on MAPS coaching. And if you are interested, how can they attend that class?
If you go to MAPS coaching / group coaching, you can get signed up for that, and you will walk away with a script book. So it's every script that we run through. My co-coach is Sarah Detmore, who is the VP of outside sales for the Loken Group. So
yeah, we've heard of them. Yeah, they're pretty good. The Loken Group.
All of her scripts too, not just mine.
Yeah, excellent. So Jen, I'll ask one more question, then I'm going to open this up for everybody. So get your questions ready. You can throw them in the chat, or we can take yourselves off mute. But why buyers? When we talk about all of the great things that listings offer, what fuels you to work with buyers? What creates that passion for you?
Well, I love people. And that's Deegan always jokes that I've got the fun side of it, right? Like I'm like the puppy dogs and rainbows and unicorns, and he's, not. He's explaining to people why their home isn't worth as much, different markets, why their home isn't worth as much as when they bought it. I think with buyers, I like understanding what makes people tick. So it's not even real estate for me. It's not even the house. It is the aspect of, I love to meet different people in different circumstances. And I think on the buy side, you get to know people more. I think it's the relationship piece of it, where potentially the listing side, not that you can't have, it's not a limiting mindset. I know you can have relationships with people on the listing side. However, that does seem more transactional based than relationship based.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so we have a couple questions in the chat. So Leslie kicked it off here. She says, Jen, do you mind kind of talking about your process for managing buyer pipelines? Who does it and how many pipelines, or how many are in the pipeline?
So what we have, so we do a pipeline report every Monday. That used to be me that handled that. Now it is our director of sales, Shanna, who is incredible. She actually was my ISA on the buy side for a long time, and now is our director of sales. So what the pipeline looks like, it is a living, breathing document, right? So we have the pipeline set up, and there are A buyers. A buyers on our team are 30-day buyers, someone that will buy right now. There are no financing issues. We've got a pre-approval letter. They've done the consult. They've signed the buyer agency agreement. Most of the time, what I have found that most agents can handle 5 to 7 of those without things starting to slip. Then we have a section on the pipeline report that are 30-day buyers with issues. And the issues may be they have a home to sell first. It may be that we're waiting on the pre-approval letter. It may be lack of inventory. If we found the house, they would go now, or if their house sells, they'll buy now. And then we have 30 plus day buyers. So those 30 plus day buyers there's something going on. There's a circumstance or something that's going to prevent them from buying right now. And then we have 60 plus day buyers. Those typically now, because we have a team, would go back to our lead generation team to nurture. If you are an individual agent and you have 60 plus day buyers, we don't want to drop them. Those would be the people to put on a smart plan with command to make sure that you're following up with them, and that you have some type of a reminder or a task set to touch base with them sooner than you think you need to touch base with them.
It's always sooner, right? We think about, I'll call them in 90 days, but really that's where we miss it. Yeah.
Yeah. If you would think you're going to call them in 90 days, I would call them in probably 40 days. And it is just, hey, Sam, it's Jen. I just wanted to check in with you, see how things were going. Just want to give you an update on the market, right? We're coming from contribution. I'm going to tell Sam something of value. And hey, Sam, has anything changed over the last, month or so? Has your motivation or timeline adjusted at all? I just want to make sure that I'm communicating with you as quickly and efficiently as you need me to.
And it's such an easy script, because it's not pressuring of like, hey, are you ready to buy or sell a house yet? It's, hey, I just want to check in to see how the situation is. Has anything changed since the last time we spoke? It could be a 2-second conversation that you're not losing anything in your database with.
Right. And it's the same with the seller. If you guys are working with sellers, the easiest is I was driving past your house and made me think of you, whether you've driven past their house or not. Drove past your house, was thinking about you. Do you need anything? Are you getting prepped to get on the market? Do you want me to take a look at anything that you're thinking of doing or projects you're considering?
Yeah. And so it sounds like you're using command to at least some capacity there, right? With smart plans. Are you breaking these people into opportunities, or are you just using tags to keep track of, okay, who are those 60-day people with issues? What does that look like from a structure?
So we do have the tags. We also are a little bit old school where we actually have it on a document. So it is an email from the director of sales to the agent. The ISA, the lead gen team, is also on there because they're their leads. And what we found is if they don't know where their leads are, they're unhappy with us. And then I'm copied in on it. So if I see somebody's name over and over and over again, potentially I'm going to jump in and see what's going on and why they're not moving forward.
And how often are you looking at that as a team? Weekly, daily?
Every Monday. Every Monday. Shanna, that's her whole Monday, our pipeline reports, and that's separate from the 411s for the team. So excellent. 2 separate meetings.
Yeah. So I love this question. So this one comes from Melinda in the chat. She says, first, thank you for your time today. And how are you winning in multiple offers besides pure price? So what are your top couple tricks on creative things that we can do besides just bring more money to the table?
So I think it starts with the relationship with the seller's agent, right? It starts with being in good communication with the listing agent and making the phone call. It's not a text message. It's not an email. We're building relationships with our co-brokers, right? That's the same thing. So I may call Sam, if you're the listing agent, and say, hey, Sam, it's Jen. I showed 123 Main Street. I'm headed back to the office to make an offer. Can you give me any insight in what's important, what's important to your sellers? And it might be closing date, it might be post-possession, it might be earnest money, it might be a variety of things that I don't know if I don't ask. So my assumption is if I'm in multiple offers, I'm going to give my best price, and then I can butter it up with closing date that works for the seller, if they need post-possession after closing, if they don't want to move something, they can leave it behind and then we can take care of it. There are all kinds of ways to win outside of price that I wouldn't know about if I didn't have a conversation with the listing agent.
Just asking the question, how can I make this a more attractive offer? Or if we bring one, what does that look like? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say these people want the home. They love it. And no listing agent really cares that your buyer has lost out on 3 other homes, if that's the case. So starting with that doesn't help. That's the language of sales. And it typically is not, you don't want to say my buyer, right? It's the buyer. We're not being possessive. We're not being argumentative. We're not anything. It's the buyer loves this home. They love what the seller has done with it. They want to, honor all of the updates they've done. They're so excited to get to raise their kids here. What else can we do? I'm telling you, the listing agent, when they hear my buyer's lost out on 3 other offers, they are thinking to themselves, well, you should write better offers. That's what you should
exactly
do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Here's another lowball. Yeah, that's from my mind.
Yeah. Congratulations, you're going to be really good at writing up offers quickly.
Excellent. All right, so what are the questions you guys have? Feel free to take yourself off of mute. Andy, thank you for your patience. I know you're just jumping at the bit. I see you come off mute. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Jen. So I'm trying to put myself in the mind of that agent that's hiring their first buyer specialist. Mm-hmm. What are they looking for in that buyer specialist? Personality, skills, experience? Like what is it that you would look for your first buyer specialist?
So that's a great question. I think you want someone that's going to have the mindset of being an empire builder. We need empire protectors too within our team. We need great admin support. We need people to kind of, shore everything up. That's a role though, that if you don't want it, you want someone that's going to grow it for you. So it's got to be somebody that's coachable. It's got to be somebody that is learning based. I don't necessarily care about experience. I don't even necessarily care if they're inside of industry. What I found is it's easy to pitch a vision of opportunity if someone's not hung up on a commission split. So I think you could go either way. I want someone with a high sense of urgency that can move people through a pipeline quickly, and someone that you like. So if, it's someone that if they're going to be with your buyers and you're going to pass your clients to them that you've worked really hard to maintain relationships with, it should be someone that you feel like, I would like to spend more time with them. I think they're smart. I think they're funny, certainly a personality, and that they can problem solve. If there's an issue that they're not going to come to you every time and say, Andy, I don't know what to do about this. There's an appraisal issue. What do I do? You need someone that is going to have ownership of role.
Yeah, what I hear you saying, you need somebody that's resourceful, mm-hmm. and you also need somebody that passes the barbecue test, that you would want to have over to your house for a barbecue.
That's exactly right. And someone that's going to align their vision to yours. So there's got to be something that's a little bit, and I don't know how you check it, and you can kind of see if you ask some questions. The ego in the buyer's agent comes from helping people. It's not a name on a sign, right? I mean, I don't have my name on a sign. Clearly, I get some attention for things, and it's still Holt Homes Group. And I do that. I'm proud of that. I will honor that brand. I will do whatever I can to move that business forward. So if you want someone to stay long term, there has to be, you know, some sort of an ego check. How does, in an interview, how does somebody talk about being on a team? And how does somebody talk about when the team member, you know, scores the winning shot? What does that look like? You know, there's some things in there that can be some red flags if you're bringing somebody on and you want them to stay long term.
And what is, so looking at your team right now, what would be the number one quality and some of your top key buyer specialists? Like, what is that X factor that you see in your people that you would look for in the next talent that you hire?
They all are, for lack of a better term, they're all high eyes, right? They all have a big personality. The personality isn't offensive though. It's not someone that you're like, oh, I cannot, I'm over it. I need them to go away. Every one of them, when I've interviewed them, at the end of the interview, I thought I would love to spend more time with them. I was disappointed when it was over. If you're doing the KPA process and you're following it all the way along and you're looking at your watch like, oh, I've been in here 2 hours, I've got all these emails and I've got all these text messages, probably not your right person. And so I think that would be it. If I were looking at the number one quality, it's someone that I'm like, this person gives me energy. I can see their light shining through. I'm going to win through them. I want to see them win. I want to see them make a ton of money, and they're going to serve our clients well.
Talk about a standard of you're being the interviewer, interviewing somebody, and you're disappointed that you have to end meeting that person. If you're leaving a meeting,
oh, sometimes I
wanting
just
more.
Yeah. I have
That's a
just
standard.
said it. Monica, sometimes our director of ops won't always let me come into interviews because if I like them too early on, then I'm like, I'll drag it out. Where she's like, this is this step. You're going into the next step. Stop going into the next step. So, you know, for us, I think the standard is I typically don't come into the interview until the second. They pass the first test first before I step in. I like to see them do some type of a role play. Like it's just, and it doesn't have to be real estate related because we're very rarely hiring people outside of a real estate. So a standard would be, I would give them a problem that would be some type of a reference to what their current role is. And I would listen to how they talked. I would listen to, okay, how would you, if I'm the customer and I call and say X, how would you respond to it? So yeah. That would be the standard of, okay, I like them, and how can I tell if they can solve a problem?
I like that challenge too, because when you put somebody on the spot, how adaptive are they? Especially as a buyer's agent, you may have to pivot really quickly.
Oh yeah, and do they get all red and splotchy, and you know what happens when they're nervous?
Yeah. All right, so we have another question here in the chat from Scott. So how realistic is only showing 3 to 4 houses? I'm guessing it's dependent on market, but I'd love to hear that. And do people in that area have that few choices, or does everything look the same? And can we have radically different neighborhoods? How do you encourage them to look on their own without them feeling they're doing all of the work themselves?
So, you know, I've been through several markets. I've been through lots of inventory to no inventory. And I think the 3 to 4 homes is super realistic in any market. I think that's a mindset choice and a scripting issue versus not. So I think that's one of those myths of not in my market or it won't work here. That's the expectation in the buyer consult. I think it's Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if I do a great job today and I make sure that I know exactly what it is that you're after and where you want to be, there are probably only 2 to 3 to maybe 4 homes that are actually going to work for you. So what we're doing is we're setting the stage for that, and we're giving and we're asking questions. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to say, I'm also not going to tie you to one of the first 4 homes we look at. If one of them doesn't work, do I have your permission to stop the showings and regroup with you? So if we get to house 4, I'm going to say, hey, Leslie, I am so sorry. I totally whiffed on this. I really thought you were going to make an offer on 123 Main Street. That was the house the whole time we were doing your buyer strategy session that I was picturing for you. What about it didn't you like? So and I've asked her permission to stop the showings in the event that it happens, right? I can do a regroup script and make sure that I know what Leslie's after. Now, what I have found when people say buyers are liars is that that is an agent issue, not a buyer issue. That's typically not criteria. It's not how many bedrooms, it's not how many bathrooms, it's not the school district, it's motivation or timeline. This buyer may be answering questions in the way they think you want them to answer it as far as timeline or motivation go. And so what you need to do is drill down on those questions, figure out what that timeline is, figure out what that motivation is, and that way you can bring them back to it and make sure that it's accurate. And if their motivation changes, again, it's okay. We can put them on a follow-up plan. However, we don't need to show them 20 houses before we decide to put them on a follow-up plan. What I know about buyers is the more homes you show them, the less confidence they have in you. So they expect you to be the expert. As far as getting them to drive by homes, right now is your easiest chance to practice that script. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, hey, these are my top, I found 8 homes for you. I found 8 homes that I think will work. I'm not sure how you're going to feel about the different neighborhoods. Would you mind to drive by those today or tomorrow and give me your top 4 picks so that I can schedule them with the sellers, get any type of additional information the seller might have, like a virtual tour, disclosures, CMA. So what we're doing is we're not saying I want you to do the work. We're saying I found these 8 houses for you. I'm sending them to you. I just am not sure how you're going to feel, because then you're coming from concern for them and what their tastes and preferences are versus, hey, I'm busy, I don't have time to do this.
Love that. And Jen, I am taking down all of your definitions. I picked out that you're not calling these buyer consultations, you're calling them buyer strategy sessions, which is incredibly powerful. And then someone else in the chat had called it that you call them aged homes versus those that sit on the market. I love aged inventory. I love it. It's fantastic. Yeah, just drop all of those nuggets on us. And we need to change all of our verbiage.
Price improvements. If you're a listing agent, you can say a price improvement, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. This is, clearly the market. I believe your house is worth this. Clearly the market is telling us something different.
And it's amazing. And like, these aren't adjustments to your models. These are micro adjustments just to what you're saying or what you're calling your process. And it has a huge impact on how it's received by your clients. I love the little detail there.
It is, and I think that is from, I have failed before. I mean, you guys, I've been doing this a long time. So I've had missteps. I've said other terms that didn't work out well. So it's watching your audience, as far as your clients, and then making that adjustment. And then we do customer service checks. I will call and say, how has your experience been so far? What could we have done differently? Was there any type of a hiccup that happened? And understanding that, even as an individual agent, maybe getting to the under contract part and say, hey, was this what you thought it was going to be when we started with your strategy session? Is there anything that, I do help a lot of first-time home buyers. Is there anything that I missed that you wished I would have gone over? Yeah.
And failing is part of the process. We talk about the accolades of 100 plus listings, but yeah, you're probably one of the biggest failures in the company. We fail our way through. We hear about it time after time. Every speaker. That's where we really learn. We just don't celebrate that publicly.
No, we try to hide that, our tears and our pillows.
But that's how we grow. And I'm sorry, I think I cut somebody off. I heard a voice in the background.
No, you're good. It's me, Sam. It's Leslie. Hey, Jen, I love this. Thank you. Quick question for you. So your strategy sessions now are online, and are virtually, and our buyers agents are doing the exact same thing. And one of the things that I hear most often from them is it's so hard to build that rapport quickly when it's online, because they're the lovey-dovey ones, right? They're the face-to-face. They want to hug you. They want to shake your hand. And how are you guys, number one, adapting your strategy sessions virtually? Because I know ours are going a lot shorter. And then how are your people building rapport really quickly?
So that's a great question. And I think that's kind of a trial and error. What I have found is if I can see people's arms, I can see what their level of engagement is. So having them to adjust the camera down or up so that and I could just say, hey, Leslie, I'm sorry, there's like a weird angle. Could you adjust your camera? And you can get it adjusted so you can see them engaged or pulled back. And so you can kind of make those mirror matches. The other part of it is coming in with a high energy. So even though you're talking to a camera, it's understanding that you probably, even though they're only 30 minutes, you should not do them back to back to back to back because it's a little bit draining. So taking a lap around, almost like if your normal personality is like an 8, like kicking it up to a 10 so that the energy comes across the screen, I think has helped a lot. And then the immediate follow-up. So after we get off of the call or the Zoom and they sign our paperwork, sending a quick text message of, oh gosh, that was the best part of my day. Leslie, thank you so much for taking that 30 minutes. I just want to let you know I'm sending you a copy of everything that you signed and I'm getting ready to do your search. Thank you so much for brightening my day.
I love it. That's perfect. And I love adjusting the camera because it's so true, even with me right now. Like, I mean, you completely notice the difference, right?
It's totally different. And you can see then if you're leaning back or leaning forward or what you're doing, you have a better estimate, especially if there are 2 people, a husband and a wife in the room together, you also then can see who the decision maker is.
Unlike figuring that out when they hop in the front seat. That's how you always can tell who the decision maker is. Who rides in the front seat?
Do you think we'll ever go back to showing, like having people ride around with us?
I know, right?
I hope not.
I doubt it.
And that's an easy script too of like, hey, I have a small glare on my end. Do you mind just adjusting your camera? Like, yeah. Take ownership of it. It's on your end and the advantage is huge. Yeah. That's fantastic. Very, very smart. All right, what other questions do you guys have? Feel free to open up the chat or take yourself off mute.
I think we would be interested, hey Sam, we would be really interested in hearing more about, as you know, we're young agents, we're a husband-wife team. We've already come to the place where we're going to need to add more people to our team. And that's coming from the position of multiple business owner and operators. You know, we've got our hands in a lot of things, and so it certainly would help to be able to structure and have to be able to outsource some of these requirements. But you had mentioned, you know, the idea of having to essentially lay people off at some point. You know, there's a concern of structuring during a period of high productivity and then a shift coming and having to sustain that structure that you created from the beginning. So kind of speaking a little more into that for those of us who are getting there. And really, honestly, I'm just concerned about, you know, bringing more people onto the team and then going through a shift.
I think that's a great question. So I think for us, what we look at is we're always going to lead with leads. So we're always going to make sure that we have enough business, number one, for the people we have and before we bring anyone else on. So that pipeline report that Sam was asking me about, I would do that for sellers too. Who do you have that's getting ready to come on the market right now? Who do you have that's getting ready to buy right now? And understanding what business you have coming 30, 60, 90 days from now before you make any of those hires. Because what happens is we've got to make sure that we've got the background knowledge of how our business runs and what those numbers are before we just say, okay, we're feeling a little chaotic because we're going in 6 different directions. We're going to hire somebody to come on. So I think for us, there's always a healthy concern there of I am impacting 18 other families. And I know that we have the pipeline to support it for a long time. It wouldn't be an overnight thing for us for it to, you know, everything stops. We're doing enough activities. There are always homes that sell in every market that we would be able to hang on for a while and then give people other solutions. If we had to let somebody go, they would, number one, know it was coming, and number two, we would have a backup plan for that person. So I think, you know, to answer that question, I think if you take a realistic look at your business, and Andy might have a better answer for this, but if you look at a realistic approach for your business of, this is my pipeline, this is what I know we have coming, and why are you hiring? Are you hiring to grow it, or are you hiring to maintain it? Because we always want to make a hire to grow the business. We're not hiring maintenance people, right? We're not hiring it to keep where we're at. So if we close 500 units this year with 18, I don't need to bring on 2 more to close 500 again next year. I would bring on 2 more to go from 500 to, you know, 575. So understanding the reason for, why you're bringing somebody on, and then making that decision from there. If it's something where you're like, I just need help with paperwork, maybe you do a VA, or maybe if there's a contract to close person in your market center that you could utilize, maybe in the short term, that may get you through kind of this harder, challenging time.
Yeah. Cool, Jen, thank you for that. And there's a question here in the chat again. So are you and your team using auto emails? So like, I'm guessing setting up saved searches on the MLS versus how much like research and like sifting are you doing for your clients, sending them properties specifically hunted by you?
So it's a great question. So we set up auto searches on the MLS. However, they come to our team. They don't go to the client. So we do sift through. And so we set up a search. If Leslie was my client, it would be set up with Leslie's name. So every time a house hit her criteria, it would come to me with her name on it. And then I would send it to her in an email and a text message. Hey, I just wanted to let you know I was looking for you today. This is what popped up. Let me know when you're available. I think this might be the one. And so I don't want to send her junk. I don't want her to have to sift through it. I want to make sure that she knows that we're being proactive. Now, the same token, if nothing pops up for Leslie, we would call and do a non-update update. Hey, Leslie, it's Jen. Just wanted to let you know I was looking for you today. Nothing new has hit the market. Just wanted to let you know, I know you want to be in XYZ subdivision. I've got our team dialing that subdivision to see if we can hit a seller before they come on the market.
And the flip side of that, so what about the buyer that is finding properties on their own, saying, hey, I want to go look at this house, and what canned script or response do you have for managing the buyers that maybe are giving you properties to look at that we know aren't a fit?
Oh, so that to me seems like a failure when they send something to me. I feel, especially if it's the house and I've not found it, I feel like I've missed something.
Okay.
Typically in the consult, I will say, you guys, this is going to be the most fun thing that you ever do. We're going to find a house and you're going to be 100% obsessed with this until we find the house. And you're going to look at Zillow, and you're going to look at Realtor, and you're going to look at every site. And there are going to be times that you send me something, and I'm going to just remind you of why I didn't send it to you, right? I'm just going to remind you that you told me you had to have 3 bedrooms, and this one only has 2. And it's fine. If your criteria changes or your motivation changes, just let me know, because I have access to additional searching opportunities than you do. So I just, if they send me something that doesn't fit, I've addressed it in the consult. I immediately would call and say, Leslie, has something changed? What happened that this changed? Are we really looking into this, or what's going on? Now, if they send me something that I should have found first, I just own it. Oh, Leslie, I'm so glad that you found that. Let's get you right in. I've already reached out to the seller. They have this or this. Now, I'm not necessarily apologizing because I don't want to set the tone that I've missed something. I'm just saying, oh, I'm so thankful for you. I'm so glad that you were looking. And we just redirect and go around it.
Makes perfect sense. Well, Jen, I appreciate you today. I appreciate your time. I know you're busy. I want to do the drawing so that we have somebody lined up for your class for next week.
So excited.
So here's what we're going to do. This is kind of on a whim here. I have written down a number on a Post-it card here in my office. So in the chat, I'm going to give you about 10 seconds. We're going to get started here. A number between 1 and 60. We have 60 people in the room. We're going to play Price is Right rules. So go ahead and pick your guess on the number that I decided, predetermined, between 1 and 60. And Price is Right, the first person to guess it and closest without going over. And we'll close that in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, closing chat. All right, so the number that I have here on my piece of paper is the number 9. And it looks like the closest that we have is whoever picked number 7, Melinda Nahn. So congratulations. I'll get you signed up. We'll get you signed up for Mastering Buyers 2.0, which kicks off right after Makey Camp, the week after Makey Camp. So
fantastic. Thanks,
I'll connect
guys.
with you on that one.
Thanks, Jen, for your time.
Oh, you're welcome, Melinda. I'd love your feedback when you're in the program. I'll call you out so you can help me.
Cool.
Have a good day. Thanks.
Jen, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your time today. I know you're super busy, and just thank you for the hour. There were so, like, I have pages and pages of notes. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jen.
You're amazing.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Jen, you're the best.
Keep that Dan Holt in check.
Oh, it's a never-ending job. It's like
I
a
can only
cattle dog.
imagine. I can only imagine.
Love
Tell
you
them
Bye,
all.
I said
dear.
hello.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.